Hello, I'm William Gallagher. This is MacNN. One more thing with, well, me, William Gallagher, but also with him, Charles Martin, editor of MacNN. Charles, hello.
No, I'm sorry. No, this is Owen Malcolm. Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness. I was dressing up, but now we can relax, can't we? Yeah.
Well, I heard Gilliam Gallagher got fired.
Not before time, really, to be fair. Okay, but, dirty laundry, we don't go there. The way to tell the difference between Charles and myself is he's a coffee drinker, I'm a tea drinker, and we sound like this. Hang on. This week's one more thing. It's about several things, but really ultimately one theme, which is this: buying. What new Apple products will you buy from this week's launch event? And do you buy the FBI's claim of being able to get into the iPhone? In fact, let's just start with that one because, Charles, I think, frankly, no, I don't. Do you?
The suddenness of the announcement that for those of you who haven't been following the story closely there, the FBI, after having raised the stakes to a constitutional crisis, just because, America could use another crisis this week, they suddenly said, oh, wait, never mind. Sorry, we wasted everybody's time. Goodbye. And asked to vacate, which means set aside temporarily in this particular case, the hearing that was going to be trying to get the judge to either enforce or remove her original order that kicked off this whole crisis in the first place. And now they've said, oh, wait, we think we've found a way without Apple, so no trouble. And it just felt a lot like somebody finally got to them and explained to them in language that they can understand, and by them I mean the FBI, that they're playing with fire, huge fire, and it might burn them, in that if the decision doesn't go their way, they'll actually be a step quite a far way backwards from where they are now. Rather than the big step forward that they were hoping to get. So I think it seems like that's what's happened. But I was reading the transcript of the hearing, and they actually said a lot of people came to us as a result of the publicity of this case with various ideas about how we could crack into this phone that we allegedly want to get into, and none of them worked, except for this last one, which they think probably will. And so but they didn't go into specifics and whatnot. I think they took the advice of former counterterrorism official Richard Clark, who chewed them a new one, incidentally, in one of our articles, as the American expression goes. And he said, just hand it to the NSA and shut up. And they'll take care of it, and just, stung, So I think that's actually what they're doing.
You don't think it's just they were pushing at the door and then realized there was a pull handle?
Well, the thing is that they're without, this is all speculation, and that's the thing. We don't know what's really going on. But but from everything they've done and from everything they've said, that the motivation, the actual motivation that this case is hanging on, that we need to get into this, this workplace shooter's phone because it might have information that we really need, always seemed a bit weak. And it seemed very obvious to everyone, Apple included, that the FBI was really going for the blanket power to do this all the time. And of course, New York State Attorney Cyrus Vance blew that, he just went up and owned that and said, yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. And then, oops, they've had to sort of climb down from that ever since. But yeah, I do think that the public opinion shifting, the fact that it's an election year, the fact that Congress may not come up with a solution that makes anybody happy, maybe made them reconsider the strength of this particular case and say, maybe we should keep our powder dry and wait for a better opportunity.
I have to say, the whole thing with the door just occurred to me when you were talking, that'd be nice. But actually, yeah, I was thinking you can argue the FBI blinked, you can argue Apple won, but it's for now. I presume the FBI will be back and they'll set a precedent some other way. Maybe next time it'll be a bigger terrorist attack. Maybe they'll start small at the FBI by going after Microsoft and getting them to open Windows Phone, because, of course, that would endanger tens of users around the world, wouldn't it?
Well, see, that would have been a better approach was, hey, instead of trying to force Apple to do something that is blatantly unconstitutional, let's start a PR campaign to get bad people to use BlackBerry. Oh, there, I said Black. Sorry, Canada, sorry.
So I think we can argue, can't we, then, that FBI thing is over, bar the shouting. The sale is done, it's closed. Let's move on to happier things. And Apple's, I thought, a little bit ramshackle event this week, launching a few things of note.
Yeah.
Maybe not of note for you, maybe not of note for me. I'm not sure. Let's just go through this one by one, starting with possibly the most significant one, the iPhone SE.
Mm-hmm.
Are you pre-ordering? Are you buying one?
I think my wife may be doing so. She just graduated up to my old iPhone 5S and likes it very much. And she's a petite flower with tiny hands compared to mine. So I think she's very comfortable with the form factor. She always said, "Oh no, that iPhone 6 is too big." And of course, then since she's had opportunities to play with my iPhone 6S, she's like, "Oh, maybe that's not as big as I thought it was." So we'll see, though. I mean, this is essentially an iPhone 6S packed into a smaller size, and that I do think, when you put it that way, I think it's something that there's a segment of the North American market that would like that. This is, once again, though, not the El Cheapo developing market phone that the pundits all wanted. And so it remains to be seen how well it'll do. Some people really do like that iPhone 5 form factor. I do. I'm still getting used to Apple's having moved the on-off switch on the iPhone 6 later.
Same here.
It's just not right, Apple. I'm sorry. It should be on the top. So I kind of like that. And of course, that it's available in rose gold, and that it has some of the more modern conveniences like Apple Pay support and stuff like that. It'll do all right. I mean, this will be, by any other company's standards, a hit product. I'm sure of that. Whether it'll be enough to justify its continued existence more than a year or so, that remains to be seen, because the world clearly spoke about this very convincingly a couple of years ago and said, bigger, we want bigger. So now for them to suddenly say, smaller, no, we want smaller, seems a little.
I'm trying to remember, it's a British game show where you go up a bit, left a bit, down a bit, kind of thing. Yeah. Oh, no, there's another game show that's higher and lower. I'm going to have to research this for the show notes. But two things occurred to me there. One is that, actually, funny enough, my wife, Andrea, is also interested in it, because she's not so keen on the larger size, but she was very keen on extra battery life, and I'm not clear what the battery is on this one. And she wanted Apple Pay. And the two of us, we both have Apple Watches, but because she's on an iPhone 5, she can't set it up. Right. Officially you can, but you actually can't. So she sees me going blip, blip with my watch every now and again, and thinking, fine, great. So she would want it for that. But battery life is key for her.
As you mentioned in your article, she has the iPhone 5, no S. Yeah. So I think it'll be better than that. But whether it'll be better or not, whether it'll be better than the iPhone that you have, the iPhone 6, remains to be seen.
So you said traveling again there. That reminds me, I keep meaning to ask you, when you travel, do you bring an iPad with you?
I usually do, and I use it because that's my end of day device. I like to, I'm carrying the iPhone with me around, but at the end of the day, when I have to prepare for tomorrow, I like to take the iPad out and do my notes and, maybe FaceTime my wife or, whatever it is. It's a more convenient form factor for resting on the couch or in bed or wherever.
So does that mean you're going to throw that away and buy, and what do we call them now? The iPad Pro 9.7 or something seems a bit Windows like, really. But the Wii iPad Pro, is that it? Are you buying one?
The iPad Pro Mini.
Yes. Confusing me.
It certainly is tempting because it has some of the nice features of the iPad Pro. But I will probably hold off because I have been pretty happy with my iPad Air 2. And although they spent the entire demo talking about how old and slow the iPad Air 2 is now, it's holding up for me. If I was more, I draw a little, but if I was better at it, I would be much more keen to get this because I want the pencil compatibility, and I'd like to see what becomes of the smart connector. But I think I'm going to wait for the iPad Pro Mini S, the year after, because by that time there'll be more smart connector accessories, and I can get a better handle on how much better this might be for me.
Well, I'm going to sound like a freak here, but I have an iPad Air, the original one, and that I love that. It's still holding up for me. The one thing I wish it would have is Touch ID. I keep forgetting that it's the only device I've got that doesn't have it now. But at the end of an average day, I will have trained the iPad Air and my iPad Pro. That's how much I use them both. And I think, how do people cope with only one screen, only one iPad? They're just freaks. I'm normal. They're freaks.
Well, this is one of the things that fascinated me was Apple, which has pushed Bluetooth a lot and maybe pushing it even harder with the iPhone 7. Sorry, leaping ahead of myself here, but there's some speculation they're going to lose the analog headphone jack in the next iPhone. And so for a company that really encouraged us to go wireless for so long, suddenly they've invented a smart connector that is not wireless. You physically connect these things. So there must be some big advantage to that, either in terms of future expandability or battery life, because Bluetooth does run down the battery. So I'll be interested to see when we get a chance to test that and find out if a smart connector keyboard on the iPad Pro results in dramatically better life than a Bluetooth keyboard with an iPad Pro.
I don't like smart connector stuff. I'm not keen on the feel of Apple's one, and it just somehow makes the iPad Pro seem like a wind sail. There's the Logitech Create one for the larger iPad Pro, and I think it's very good. It's very clever, a bit more plasticky, and I quite like the typing feel. But again, I'm driving a boat instead of this stuff. I use an external Logitech keyboard on my iPad Pro an awful lot, and most of the time I am very conscious that it eats up the battery power. The other day I did get a continuous 10 hours work straight out of it while using that keyboard. I don't know why I did that day and not others. I must have been just solidly writing. But usually, that's the price you pay. You give up time for a keyboard.
The battery in the keyboard and a Bluetooth keyboard lasts months, forever.
That's true. Yes.
It just, but something is, I guess it's the Bluetooth radio inside the iPad. Just, that takes up much more power, or at least did anyway, than
receiver.
Yeah.
Because the keyboard only ever transmits, presumably. There's got to be some authentication back and forth, but otherwise it's just the QWERTY layer.
Yeah.
I'm conscious that Apple is still selling the iPad Air 2, and I was a little surprised at that. If I were going to buy a new iPad now, I don't think I would buy the iPad Pro, the little one, because I needed to get the iPad Pro, the big one, for all sorts of reasons, but I need it for this. It wasn't like I was lusting after it the way I usually am for it. It's only having since got it that I've become to think it's the most gorgeous thing ever. There's something about the iPad Pro that's better than its specs, I think. So if I was looking at this, new customer, there's list of specs, I think I'd go for the iPad Air 2. So is this muddying the waters by having them both available?
I think the public perception of the iPad Pro, as you mentioned, once you actually start using it, you realize that this is much more the realization of the original dream of the iPad as a notebook replacement, or at least a better than notebook replacement for most people. Because really, when you think about the typical user and what they do with a computer, it isn't a lot of high-end stuff. It's basic. I see a lot of FaceTime. I see a lot of not, passive use, like watching movies and such. And of course, I see people, they've got their little Bluetooth keyboard and they're doing writing, but that's not really a very intensive computing task. So FaceTime and things like that, or Facebook and FaceTime, that sort of thing, not the highest end stuff. And so the iPad was intended to be the typical person's computer. It had enough computing power for the typical person and was easier to use. And the fact that, at least where I live, a lot of seniors have adopted the iPad as their primary computer sort of speaks to that. The iPad Pro, I think, the original one, fulfills that dream. So I think, though, that there's this public perception among people who don't use one that the iPad Pro is for people who draw, right? It's because you sort of have to get the pencil to go with it. And the advertising always seems to emphasize this part. So now we have the iPad Air 2, which is an iPad, the iPad Pro 9.7, which is for people who want to draw but can't quite afford an iPad Pro, and an iPad Pro.
Or just buy one of everything. I realised when I said about the specs and things, when I got out the iPad Pro, of course, you notice the screen first. There were things later, very quickly realised how fast it is compared to everything else. And then also the first time I tried to play a video on it, it was just so loud compared to the old iPad. It was brilliant. You kind of get used to that very quickly. Beyond that, and you also get used to the speed, except when you go back to the iPad Air and can compare. I think beyond that, it's the physical size of it is what does it for me. Because when I'm working in OmniFocus, so I'm doing project planning in OmniPlan, I feel like I've got both hands on the screen, and I feel like I'm actually kneading bread. I'm in my work rather than pointing at it and swiping across it. With a smaller screen, I presume I'm not going to get that. And how much use is split screen when both are that small? I'm curious. I need to go play with one.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
You just
or just buy one.
Dear, I'm going to buy the smaller one as well. It's research, my dear.
Well, I did buy Ancha an Apple Watch, so she can't question me about the whole research investment spending. I had to have somebody to send a heartbeat to, so I had to buy a watch, of course. Clearly.
Wait, you mean I'm not the only one you send heartbeats to?
Yeah, she sends them back. Okay.
Oh. You're really. Ooh, bird.
Apple Watch this week. Is it not the most exciting thing ever that there are new watch bands? Yeah, yay.
Well, actually, just before this announcement, I had decided to take the plunge and order extra watch bands. I have never done this. I was still wearing the sport band that my Apple Watch came with. And so I thought, there are occasions where I should dress up a bit, and sometimes when I'm showing off the watch a bit, and maybe I should have a little nicer band. So I got myself a black Milanese sort of band with the magnetic clasp. As far as I can tell, it's a third-party company's one, but it looks exactly like the one Apple just announced. So very prescient on my part, I think. But but yeah, I'm now in the camp of people who are like, yeah, I do need a band that will go with this outfit. I've become glib and surfacey and one-dimensional.
I would say that because I have two.
Yeah.
I have a Nomad leather one, and I really don't know. It was a birthday present, but it was kind of up to me. What did I want? And for some reason, I was really drawn to this, and I really like it. I truly believed I would never swap. When I was getting the watch, I thought it'll be the provided band would be plastic, rubbish. I'll replace it when I can afford to. And I got it and thought, this is actually fine. This is more than fine. I like this. Yeah. I'm never going to change. Yeah. Months later, I've swapped it to this leather one, and I've never swapped back. I can't see me mixing and matching with my evening wear. I think the leather goes with everything. Obviously, I'm stylish, so, I can carry it off regardless.
I do have one problem with this lovely Milanese, which I really like a lot, except for one small thing, or perhaps one more thing, is that I spend a lot of my day typing on a MacBook Pro, and I don't know if you've noticed, but they're made of metal. And so the Milanese band's magnetic clasp keeps wanting to attach to it.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll lift my hand up off the keyboard and the watch will sort of resist because the bottom of the where the magnetic clasp is on the metal part of the wrist rest. So yeah, it's that's been a little bit of a problem.
Many years ago, one of my BBC editors said that she always thought I was very kind of practical and getting on with things, because every morning I'd sit down at this MacBook, I'd take my watch off, put it to the side and get working. And it was like, right, he's really on this, he's concentrating. And the truth is, I had a metal band and it was scraping against the case. So,
Exactly.
yeah, you never know the impact a strap will have in every sense.
There is no chance I'm taking this band. I never take the watch off while I'm typing, because you and I type pretty quickly, you faster than me, but we both type very quickly when we're in the zone. And that counts as activity.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, I feel better now.
Yeah, you know what, which is funny, because since we started writing about this FBI thing, I'm of course writing these furious why the FBI is wrong again articles, and this has increased the agitation of my typing, which has in turn increased, not hugely, but it does increase the recorded activity.
So
you're flailing your hands around like Beethoven on a piano.
Yes. Not to judge here, but it sounds like our primary fitness regime is typing, both of us. We've both succumbed to new bands.
Mine is split between walking through airports and typing. Yes, that is my life these days. I'm also excited about the price cut, I have to say.
Yes, I was wondering about that.
I think this will push a lot of people, because I'm always going on about how much I love the watch to people, and I think that will push them. They're like, yes, it does. It sounds very nice, but $350. Now it's been cut $50. That may push a lot of people the way it did over Christmas. That may push a lot of people into giving it a try. There's a psychological barrier in pricing, and $299 sounds a lot cheaper than $350 for some reason.
You don't think inventory clearing ahead of Apple Watch 2?
I don't. Mike and I have talked about this on the main podcast. We don't see, while we could certainly see Apple coming out with a 1.1 edition of the Apple Watch for Christmas this year that has maybe better battery life or something like that, we don't see them replacing this hardware outright with an all-new model for a while yet. We really don't. Apple tends to do complete replacements, barring the iPhone. Apple tends to do complete hardware replacements when only one of two things happens. Hardware has advanced so much that you have to upgrade the hardware to take advantage of it. And we haven't seen that happen yet with the watch. And then the other is when the competition catches up. And by and large, although there are some very fine smartwatches not made by Apple, they haven't. So I don't see, until they get a breakthrough in sensors or some other completely new ability where they would have to replace the hardware, I don't think they will. And so it might be, Mike and I are of the opinion that it'll be Christmas 2017 before we see a really substantially new Apple Watch.
I'm actually going to try to build something here, so bear me with this. We started with the whole coffee-tea difference that we will never cross the divide. I like coffee, you like tea, but we are in the tea and the coffee camps firmly. After that, though, we agreed about the iPhone SE. We pretty much agreed about the iPad.
Yeah.
We turned out to be the same about Apple Watch bands, which surprised me, but there you go.
Slave to the fashion.
Unfortunately, this is where we're going to fall out. iOS 9.3 is out, and I know, because I've heard you on One More Thing, saying how much you like Night Shift, and I don't. Do you want to defend it before I destroy every positive thought about it?
I can only defend it by saying this. I mean, my wife always walks by my desk late at night and she goes, "What's wrong with your monitor?" Because I have the Mac OS equivalent of it, which is called FLux, F.LUX, on my screen here, and it turns it slowly more and more orangey until it begins to look like Donald Trump after a sunbathing session. And yeah, well, because I tend to work far later into the night than I should. But I can only say this, that the research behind the idea is sound, that it reduces eye strain and that or eye fatigue, I should say, and that there may be a connection that will help you sleep better. When I installed the beta of 9.3 on my iPad, I mentioned earlier, that's my last machine of the day that I use for looking at stuff when my eyes are a little tired. I like the larger screen so I can read easier. And I did notice that once I put Night Shift on there, that my eyes didn't get as tired as quickly and that I did fall asleep faster. So I think they're onto something about this. But as you point out, not everybody wants it. Not everybody works on the same shift. You know, not everybody, for some of us, evenings are the beginning of the day, not the end of the day.
I can rebut all of that. Yes, I understand the science is right. I notice Apple are quite cautious. They're not saying it magically improves your sleep. They just throw in, it might help. And again, I kind of like that. But in my case, none of it matters because it looks so horrible and brown at the end of the night when I switch on my iPhone. I just think, ugh. You know, it's such a nice screen, and now it's all brown. You can call it orange. They can call it warm. It's brown. And I just, that's it. No. Listen, this is a special One More Thing, which, of course, has to have Thingies of the Week, but I would like it, if possible, to have a themed Thingy of the Week, wherein we pick the one thing from Apple's launch this week that really interests us, the thing we want. Can you do that? Have you got something? Have we mentioned what you would make your thingy?
We haven't. And in order to set this up, I should mention that for those of you who didn't see the live stream of the event, it wasn't just, "Hi, everybody, here's a new phone." They spent quite a bit of time at the beginning talking about a few other things. They spent a good portion of time on their environmental record, a nice little update about all that. They spent a couple of minutes, and I do mean literally about 2 minutes, on the FBI and security thing and just how committed they are to security. They also spent a little time with my thingy of the week, which is CareKit, a new software development kit following in the footsteps of ResearchKit. Again, in case you missed it, Apple last year about this time put out ResearchKit, which was designed to help medical professionals put together applications that people could take advantage of on their phones or iPads in some cases to test themselves, to report in the results of the conditions that they're living with to their medical team, to take surveys about living with something like, say, diabetes or heart disease, and so on. And it opened a huge door. COO Jeff Williams spent a little time talking about what an impact ResearchKit had in terms of getting people to participate in surviving breast cancer studies and blood pressure studies and things like that. And so it has been a huge boon for researchers because they can pull more volunteers from more places all around the world. And this is very exciting, the part about ResearchKit that was fantastic was that instead of just you have to go to a doctor's office and he takes a little snapshot of your condition that day, which can be affected by what you had for breakfast that morning, literally, in the case of, say, cholesterol or blood pressure, they get a continuous, if you permit it, they give a continuous stream of how you're doing, what your heart rate is like, how much you're exercising, how much you're exercising versus how much you say you're exercising. and lots more data, which is actually helping them tremendously. And CareKit is the outgrowth of this. Because one of the fascinating things about medical studies was that patients would participate, but they themselves got very little benefit. They couldn't see the overall results of the study. They just hoped that their contribution would help humanity in some future way, and maybe they got a few bucks for donating blood and that sort of thing. CareKit, on the other hand, is the other end of this, where you can now, doctors and hospitals and medical institutions can develop applications that will help patients manage their own recovery better. And it's more than just reminding you to take your pills. It's all about, we can see how much activity you're doing, and we can see whether you're following the recommendations. And as a result, we can tailor the recommendations. Sometimes people get told by their doctor, I want you to go home and put an ice pack on your face because you just had a tooth out, and they don't. And this hinders their recovery. And then they complain about pain or discomfort or a bad reaction to a medication. Maybe they've been overprescribed or underprescribed. This sort of thing can really help improve the patient-doctor interaction.
I just wish you hadn't mentioned dentists there. I've had dental work recently. I want to move on. I want to just get that out of my head.
Let's just move on from there.
I'd like to point out that your Thingy of the Week is basically going to help mankind. My Thingy of the Week from this week's Apple launch is just going to help me. I like Xcode 7.3. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even mentioned in the event itself, but it's come out as part of all the stuff supporting the new iOS updates and watchOS updates. And it's just Xcode is just a really nice development tool for apps. You cannot believe how much a low-level dabbler I am, how much I do not know. It's one of those Apple things that just has those little moments of delight. You're wondering, how do I do this? Oh, of course, that's how you do it. All the way through Xcode. Oh, love it. Give me some more.
And of course, this is how iOS apps are built. So that's
a good point. I should mention that.
So this does tie into the Research Kit and the Care Kit, though, because so now we have these tools that you can use to build medical apps, but then you need an actual thing that will actually assemble that app from the idea you had to the finished product, and that's Xcode. So really, Xcode is helping humanity.
You're just saying that to make me feel better about myself, aren't you? I'm not going to stop you.
The work you're doing is important, I'm telling you. It's important.
And Harmony is gone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.